We have, speaking of police, we have a couple more stories here about police. This is in Axios. It's by Jessica Boehm. New Arizona law makes it illegal to film within 8 feet of police. Just to be clear, this is grossly and patently, obviously unconstitutional. It will soon be illegal in Arizona to film law enforcement activity within 8 feet of a police officer. Governor Doug Ducey this week signed into law a bill that supporters say will protect police officers from harm. The law will take effect in September. The bill was sponsored by Rep. John Kavanaugh. That's weird to me. Is there really a rep? I'm not aware of this. Is there a rep that shares a name that's I think it's spelled slightly differently with Justice Kavanaugh? Anyway, a retired officer with the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey. What he's saying, quote, nobody walks up to a cop when he is questioning a suspect, a suspicious person, or arresting somebody and stands 1 or 2 feet away. Common sense says you're asking for trouble. Okay. The issue is not common sense. The issue is it constitutional? It's obviously not constitutional. This has been found time and again, you guys, through the federal courts, even by the Supreme Court. You have every right to film a public officer on duty. Every right, especially when they're in public. So let me tell you how the legal argument goes. If I'm walking down the sidewalk, minding my own business, and I walk past 2 people who are having a conversation, anything that I overhear from those people is not protected. They don't get to claim privacy because they're in public and I'm walking by them, right? So the same logic applies to police. They do not get to claim this is some sort of private interaction. They are public officers who are working in our name, and they are in public, the vast majority of the time anyway. You have every right to film the police, and you should. And I mean every single time that you interact with them, you should film the police. So disregard this law. I really mean it. Disregard it because it's brazenly unconstitutional. You should film the police every single time that you interact with police. You also really shouldn't talk to cops, you guys. I don't think I've really gone down that path before as much as I talk about police. Under no circumstance should you talk with the police. I don't care how friendly they're being. I don't care how they approach you. You should not talk to police, and you have a right not to. In fact, that's in your Miranda rights, right? Which were just also partially gutted by the Supreme Court. But anyhow, you do still have a Fifth Amendment right to due process, and that includes a protection against unreasonable search and seizure, which means that police cannot just question you about anything whenever they would fucking like. You should never talk to the police, period, full stop. And you should film them at every opportunity. And I would include you guys, when you're going about your day, if you see someone else having to deal with the police, you should walk up, pull out your phone, and start filming them. I don't care if you're in Arizona or elsewhere. You have a constitutionally protected right to film the police. So in addition to defunding and abolishing the police and building an institution from scratch that actually invests in public safety, we also should film the police. So maybe that can become a hashtag on Twitter as well. Defund police, abolish police, and film police, right? Another devastating story about police. This one is from New Mexico. APD, this is in some local KOB4 is the source for this. APD, SWAT standoff ends with house fire, 14-year-old killed. Notice, by the way, God, that drives me nuts. What comes first here? Ends with house fire and a 14-year-old loses their life. Wouldn't you switch those? Anyway, that's just a nitpicky point, but from Albuquerque, an overnight SWAT standoff with a suspect ended with a house fire in southeast Albuquerque. Police have confirmed that a 14-year-old boy was found dead inside the home after the fire was put out. Police said the suspect, Keont Kelly, I apologize if I'm butchering that, was wanted on a federal felony warrant for robbery. Police said they tracked the suspect to the home on the 8100 block of San Joaquin Avenue Southeast at around 10 p.m. Wednesday, but the suspect and the teenage boy hid in the home. Several hours later, at around 3 a.m., police saw smoke emerging from the windows. Firefighters were eventually able to put the fire out, but officials said the front half of the house was engulfed in flames. The suspect reportedly exited the home as Albuquerque Fire Rescue was extinguishing the fire. He was taken into custody and then transported to a local hospital for burn injuries. The 14-year-old boy, however, was found dead by fire crews and police officers. No official cause of death has been determined at this time. Okay. They add that because they want you to wonder if this suspect killed the kid. No, what actually happened, and they go on later in this article to confirm that, and other reports have come out saying that what actually happened is the SWAT team threw a whole bunch of fucking flash grenades into the house, and that lit the house on fire. So what did cops do? They turned a robbery into the murder of a 14-year-old boy. This is what they do. They escalate situations. They make situations violent without any reason. And, and then they hide behind, but we stop violent crime while we're committing it. Unbelievable. Once again, we need to defund and abolish police and start from scratch on this, you guys. The institution is rotten to its core, and you cannot fix it. You just cannot fix it. So this is our response to a robbery. Notice the guy is not even accused of committing violence. He's accused of a robbery. And what they do is burn a fucking house down and kill a 14-year-old trying to arrest him. So this is our system. That's why it needs to change so drastically. And this is why we need to support the defund the police movement. And I have one more thread here. We talked a little earlier about Alec. This is once again by Alec, and this is on media rhetoric surrounding crime and police and our current system of dealing with crime. He says, thread, this is an urgent request for all journalists to stop referring to politicians who want to increase human caging as, quote, tough on crime. It's like referring to Exxon as tough on climate change. Quite a comparison there. We also have a big oil story coming up later. First, having people think more police, prosecutors, and prisons is tough on crime is factually wrong. The scientific consensus is that addressing root causes of violence through housing, early childhood education, medical care, mental health, arts, etc., is how we reduce harm. There is no scientific dispute that reducing inequality and investing in things families and communities need is by far most significant thing we can do to improve safety across the board. People advocating for those investments are tough on crime. It is thus one of the great public relations coups of the modern era that the constellation of police, prosecutors, bail bond companies, private equity firms, for-profit prisons, and their obedient politicians have convinced the news media to call them tough on crime. I show at length with hundreds of examples these powerful interested actually ignore most crimes committed by most people. They only choose to harshly enforce some crimes by some people, almost all of whom are poor. Second, using, quote, tough on crime to describe anti-science human caging policies has devastating consequences. Although scientists agree that harsher sentences don't deter crime, they do kill people. The U.S. has a total life expectancy for all people of 2 years lower than if it imprisoned people like other comparable countries. I just want to reiterate, you guys, he said this in that quote, but that life expectancy is not just of the incarcerated. That's of all people. We have a life expectancy that is 2 years lower than other comparable countries that imprison people significantly less. These tough on crime politicians have cost us hundreds of millions of years of human life. Finally, calling right-wingers who want to selectively use state violence against powerful people tough on crime is a major strategic blunder for people of goodwill who care about preventing the rise of fascism. It is absolutely essential that ordinary members of the public not automatically associate dangerous, ineffective right-wing state violence, largely against the poor, the working class, and people building power for social movements, as necessary for their own safety. If people associate right-wing state violence with their own safety, no matter how much this resembles flat earth superstition and science denial, the right-wing movement of overt fascism will be hard to stop. Journalists must see this and be more objective about these words. So Alec, once again, you guys, I just really cannot encourage you all enough to follow him and support his work at Equality Alec on Twitter. He just does a remarkable job of punching through the propaganda that we see from media outlets all over the country on a regular basis. And he's really even before I even started reading Alec's work, I was, sort of opposed to the way that the media reports on crime and police. And he has opened my eyes so much further and elucidated so much of this stuff to me. He has pointed out the dynamics, the ins and outs of how that propaganda actually works. And I just really cannot encourage you all strongly enough to follow his work. He's also, as I read through these threads, you guys, almost every week I bring you a thread from Alec. He's constantly referring back to other articles and other threads he's written and things. So please go check them out so that you get a more detailed understanding than I have time to bring you in one segment of my show, right? At Equality Alec, go give him a follow if you really want to understand how the media condones and facilitates the violence and misconduct that we see from police and prosecutors on a regular basis. So that's what we have on police for today. But obviously, that is an institution that needs to be rid of and replaced. And I don't care what slogan you want to use. I know some people are critical of defund the police and abolish police. I choose to use them because I think they're just accurate. But whatever you want to call it, that institution needs to be replaced, completely rid of and replaced with an institution that, for example, was not started by slave catchers, and does not have racism and classism cooked right into it from inception.